What's up, BC? Tim here. Enjoying a cup of tea coming from the record room. Very good. I decided I'd reply to Big Star 1000's thread, Gimme 10 for the 70s. So, I don't think he even did 1972 yet, but I decided let's start with 1972. So, 1972 is pretty difficult for me because I don't have a lot of records from 1972, which surprised me. But I was looking through the collection, and I didn't come across too much. So for this list, this isn't necessarily the best albums from 1972. There's just some personal favorites that are in my collection. So, I'm going to start off with Can. And this is a classic album. Ig Bumyasi. Hope I'm saying that right. Just a classic krautrock album. A little bit more accessible than Tego Mago, I think. More straightforward. The drums are killer. It has maybe Can's catchiest song to date, Sing Swan Song, which is very good. And I'm So Green. So yeah, that's just a great record. All the Can records I've heard have been phenomenal. Gotta get them all. Yeah, just wonderful classic. Not much else to be said about that. So next up, we have Archie Shepp with Attica Blues, which is a very cool later impulse from 1972, of course. Very intense spiritual jazz, mixed with very intense vocal performances. And a hell of a lineup on this thing. We got Archie Shepp, Marion Brown, Dave Burrell's on here, Jimmy Garrison. There's a lot of people on here. Yes, it's like a big band setting. And Archie's the arranger. He arranged everything. And most of these songs have vocals on it and nice little interludes of spoken word poetry. Recommended if you're a Shepp fan. And just goes through all types of music as well. Very ambitious little project. Alright, another classic. Nick Drake, Pink Moon. Oh no. And this is just probably my favorite Nick Drake record. I saw some people were showing Brighter Lot. Is it Brighter Lotter? Is that how you say it? Anyway, that's a great record as well. But this is always my favorite. Stripped down. It almost serves as an epitaph for Mr. Drake. Unfortunately. That gatefold is so cool. And this is the reissue from, I think, 2012. But yeah, it's just, this is one of my favorite records, period, as far as singer-songwriter. And the early 70s were really good for the singer-songwriter genre. I notice. One of the best times for sure. That in the late 60s. Just a bunch of immense talents. Here's some R&B. Bobby Womack, Understanding. And this is just great. Soulful. Great band, great guitar, great arrangements. Has the classics. I Can Understand It, which to my knowledge was a club hit back in the club scene in the early 70s before disco. Do a great cover of And I Love Her. I'm not very big on these Beatles covers, but when they're done right, they're very good. Yeah, this is just great. This is wonderful. Highly recommended. R&B record. Alright. 70s were big for prog, the rise of prog rock. And in the beginning, prog started off great. But after a while, it started getting, you know, just bloated and extremely cheesy. And that's when punk started, so. But in the early 70s, prog was great. So here is arguably Yes's best record, Close to the Edge. Prog masterpiece, must have. And this album just has a lot of folk influence. In the beginning, on side one, I was sensing a lot of. They had some like Gang of Four type guitars, which I thought was interesting. Ironically enough, maybe Gang of Four was listening to Yes on the down low. That rhythmic strumming pattern is what I'm referring to. A lot of folk influence on this, I noticed. And Siberian Cat True. Yeah, that's a hell of a track. Highly recommended. Essential prog. Alright. A very underrated Black Sabbath record, in my opinion. Volume 4. Which shows our boys experimenting with different colors and textures. But it's sludgy. Very sludgy. Wonderful gatefold. And this is just great. Of course, Wheels of Confusion, Tomorrow's Dream, Snowblind, St. Vitus Dance. Yeah, this is wonderful. Underrated Sabbath record, probably one of my favorites. And I always just think, what did all the Sabbath heads think when Changes came on? Were they disappointed? Maybe. I think it actually flows pretty well, though. They did right. They did right. But yeah, and they'd explore more on Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage, but I know Ozzy is a big Beatles fan, so he started to show a little bit of that influence here. Still super heavy, super sludgy. Yeah, great record. Highly recommended as well. Here's an interesting one. Captain Beefheart, Clear Spot, which is his pop record. Or let me say his good pop record. Because, you know, Unconditionally Guaranteed, let's not talk about that. But here we have Clear Spot, which is actually a pretty phenomenal record. Not my favorite Beefheart, but a cool listen every once in a while. I really like the slow, soulful songs on here. We got My Head Is My Only House Unless It Rains, and Too Much Time. I got too much time to be without love. And he has some heavy stuff on here as well. Gotta love Beefheart. This is a good record to get into Beefheart, maybe, for more of your regular rock crowd. Like I said, not the best Beefheart, but definitely, for 1972, I think it's a hell of a record. So I decided to show it. Here it is, guys. Europe 72 by the Grateful Dead. Triple record set. What do we got here? Oh, that's upside down. Yeah, well, it's all blank. You get the picture. But yeah, the Grateful Dead are definitely not known for their studio albums, which are, I'm not going to say atrocious, but they're not the best. But as a live band, they are great. I think they're great. And their 72 tour in Europe was arguably their best. So this is a pretty good document. My only problem is the sequencing of tracks. You know, the tracks that should have been at maybe the end of record 3 were on side 1 of the first record, which I thought was bizarre, but... And there was studio doctoring, but pretty great example of official Grateful Dead records. This is probably the best example of who they were as a live band, so... Pretty great stuff. Sorry if I'm not going too in-depth, you know, I'm trying, peeps, I'm trying. Okay, I may get some shit for this, but I don't care. And I'll explain why. Chicago 5. Oh yeah, baby, wood grain. Tell me that's not 70s. Chicago... Let me explain something about Chicago. People shit on Chicago.